Some people believe having two financial advisors means double the wisdom. When is that true? And when does it really just mean you have double the confusion? In today's episode, we're going to talk about why people have two advisors, what they might gain or lose from that arrangement, and when it can help or hinder your outcomes.
It's easy to get lost on the way to retirement. Things like taxes, improper planning, and excessive market risk can all lead you astray from your goal of a successful and happy retirement. That's where Liz Whittaberry comes in. She's a holistic financial advisor and the founder of Best Path Advisors, and she can help guide you to a better financial path. This is Retire on Your Best Path with Liz Whittaberry.
Hey everybody, welcome into Retire on Your Best Path with Liz Whittaberry and myself as we talk investing, finance, and retirement. And remember those Double Mint commercials, Liz? Double Mint gum, twice the fun, right?
Those were good. I loved those.
Yeah, twice the fun with Double Mint gum, but maybe not
Yes.
twice the fun with two advisors, right? It could be twice the confusion. To your point, we see this kind of question like online chats or people responding to videos or, just all kinds of different things. Email questions come into advisors all the time about, hey, I've got, my money in two different places with two different people because, I feel like it's given me more, insight or whatever. And I think a lot of people turn around later on and kind of feel like it's just more confusion. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit. And we'll just kind of set the stage with why even think about splitting your money in the first place? What are some of the things you've seen or heard or come across?
A lot of people will say they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket.
Right.
And they feel like having two different advisors means they have two different baskets, which is possibly true, but they might have the same exact thing pretty much at both advisors and not really be diversifying. They might want multiple opinions. I've had people say, I'll give you a little bit of money and let's see if you can beat my other guy.
Right.
And they really want to turn it into who can get the best return without even thinking about what is the return you need for your goals.
Yeah.
That's a whole different important question. And I think that then sometimes people just end up with accounts in a lot of places. Maybe they've had different things that they've accumulated over the years. They've received some inherited IRAs that they still have with mom or dad's advisor, and they just haven't done anything to bring them all together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And since you kind of framed it that way, let's talk about some of the immediate issues that could pop up with having two people. You mentioned I'll give you a little bit, let's see how you do. How do you quantify who's doing what, and how do you measure performance, right? So let's say you give, you go to advisor A and advisor B. And advisor A, you're giving all your conservative stuff. You want to your safer stuff. And advisor B, you're saying, hey, take the risk, go after the whatever. And the market's on fire. Advisor B looks like they're kicking booty, right? So,
Right.
But how do you judge that comparison? Because you're asking them to do two different things. That's one
Exactly.
place.
Yeah. And that's a very good point. And that does happen because maybe even one person that they're hiring has a more aggressive way of managing money than another person that they're hiring.
Yeah.
One person might be saying you need to buy into the market, and the other person is saying you need to get out of the market. Well, how can you tell which
who do you
would
listen
be
to?
who do you listen to? But on your point about trying to track performance, you then have to decide, well, what time frame am I looking at this? Am I looking at it over just 3 months at a time? Am I looking at it over a year to decide who's doing the best? Or am I looking at it over, like the lifetime of my plan through the different cycles? And how do you understand what these different accounts should be earning in different cycles? Because that's going to change over time. And one thing might be outperforming this year. To your point, the market's really on fire. And then next year, it could be the underperformer.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. And there's so many little pieces, in this conflicting or, hidden problems that people maybe not thinking about because they don't deal with this every day. Often, and we're not talking about two advisors in the same firm, Liz. We're not talking about working with someone like yourself and maybe you have a junior advisor or something like that. We're talking about going to two completely different firms here. And so if you think they're calling each other or talking to each other to do the best thing for you as the client, you're sadly mistaken. That's probably not happening. So therefore, you don't really have any unified strategy, let alone, tax strategy and things of that nature too, right?
Right. And that is very true. Over the years, I've had some clients that have had another advisor for a portion. Maybe it's something that they inherited and they still have it with dad's advisor or something like that. Well, we're trying to work through some of that tax planning. When do you do Roth conversions? When do you harvest gains or harvest losses? And they're not getting the same advice from the other advisor. Maybe sometimes we need to be doing something with those other accounts, and yet that may not line up with what the other advisor is wanting to do from what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes it very difficult. On top of that, you can end up with risk that you don't really know you have because no one's looking at the whole portfolio to say,
Right.
do you have too much in this category or too little in this other category? And if each advisor only has a limited window view, they don't know what else you have in all these other areas. And I work with people that are getting ready to retire. So we're putting together their bucket plan, what needs to be in bucket one, bucket two, bucket three. It would be very hard to design that if a lot of the money was in other places and those people don't use bucket planning and they're approaching it from an entirely different way of managing. How do you get the right assets into each of the buckets in order to have the income that you need, the stability that you need, do all the things that you want to do to, create that retirement income safely and securely?
Yeah, and to that point, Liz, a lot of times people do think that they get diversification and wisdom, right, by going to a big box store, on this side of the street and getting a couple mutual funds, let's say. And then they go, down the street to the other big box, big name firm or whatever, get a couple other mutual funds, and then they go, sweet, I'm diversified, right? And often you're really not diversified. They may have different account names. They might be a different kind of fund name, but a lot of times these things have massive overlap and probably
Yes.
fees too, right?
Yes. And to your point on the fees, it's a lot harder to get to that break point in fees.
Right.
If you're you're under the thresholds every place that you've got it. So you end up with higher fees as a result of that.
Because
having
like
it
if you
split.
have all your money in one place, sometimes you get a better rate, so to speak.
Right, you do. You get
Yeah.
break points if someone's managing your money and you have more, then you get break points as
Gotcha.
that builds, and so that lowers the fees.
Yeah. Another point. Yeah.
But I think if all you're looking at is trying to make you're just wanting to invest and you're not doing any planning, you're not concerned about tax planning or income planning or estate planning or any of these other things, and you just want to put the money to invest, then, having it split between a couple of advisors that are investment focused and have a different investment approach, maybe that works for you. But once you start trying to do the real planning, then it becomes a lot more difficult to have that work because how do you have a really clear plan to guide you in the actions you need to take if it's all over the place and you're getting lots of different conflicting advice?
Yeah, to me, I think for most people that just seems like not the way to go. And again, to the point we started this conversation, we've seen this pop up, for a number of years now, and in all different kinds of formats out there. Where people say, "I had to, I had a broker, and I had this or that," and it just feels confusing, and it just becomes more conflicting. And I think as we get closer to retirement, Liz, that overall, well, first of all, just being closer to retirement in general, I think as we age, we just want life to be simpler, right? So this is confusion that we maybe just don't need. And to your point, now you don't have that cohesive strategy that you can kind of, just kind of go, hey, Liz, what do we do next, right? You're turning to one person versus multiple people.
I think that's a very good point. As you're approaching retirement, then you need to have that comprehensive plan to pull everything together to know exactly how you're going to handle your income, where it's going to come from, what you can do to minimize your lifetime taxes, all of how you can manage the risk, how you can have everything lined up where it needs to be lined up, and how you can plan for what you're going to be leaving, that legacy.
Yeah.
And all of the estate planning, having it at one place lets you get that really good cohesive plan. I had a client years ago that they brought money to me that they didn't have with an advisor.
Okay.
They had another advisor that had some other money that they'd had a long relationship with, and they didn't want to do anything about that relationship at the beginning, but we started doing some tax planning, and we needed to make some changes that we were trying to improve their lifetime tax bill.
Right.
And the work that was being done in the other accounts was actually negating everything that we were
Oh
doing.
man.
Yeah. So they were ending up, right back with the same tax situation or, what we were trying to do. It was costing more than it should because of the other actions, even though they were asking the other advisor to do certain things to coordinate with the plan. And the other advisor just said, our portfolio manager knows best.
Mm.
And that was the end of that relationship. They asked me to manage everything so that we could coordinate the plan and have it work the way that we were trying to have it work and then meet all of the goals that we had down the line. And that, I think, is something that as you're trying to do those more complicated things that you have to realize you really need one person that is guiding this plan and can help you work through these different things. And I think on top of that, it also becomes important for your surviving spouse, especially if that's somebody that's not all that involved in all of this planning.
Right. Yeah,
If
well,
they
that's a great point, right? Who wants
Yeah.
to turn to multiple people in the event that you pass away and you've been doing the heavy lifting? I would like my spouse to be able to call one person and say,
Right.
this is who you go to if something should something happen to me,
Yeah, and not have to try and figure out who's giving the best advice, whose advice do I
Right.
follow?
Yeah.
How do I now start managing this? That to me is a big weight that you would put on
Yeah.
the surviving spouse if they're
Exactly.
not involved and don't have these relationships. It could also be the same for kids, harder for the heirs for the same reason, but the surviving spouse is the one that I would be, even more concerned
Yeah,
about making
absolutely.
sure it's simple for
Mhm.
him or her,
Right.
depending on
And Liz,
who that is.
I talk to advisors all across the country, and I'll just ask the question directly. And many of them will say, if working with two advisors is what you want to do, we're probably not a good fit for you as
Right.
as a client. You've mentioned that you have done it before. Is it something that you will do, or is it not a preference, or just kind of what's your thoughts? In general, if you can avoid that complication, do you?
If I can avoid that, absolutely yes. There are rare situations where I have a client that has more than one advisor.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 99% of my clients have all of their money with me.
Right.
And that's because once we get into the planning, then they see there is so much benefit to having one person that is really guiding that whole plan.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we're not working with some other advisors along the way. There are times that we need to pull people in that have some expertise that I don't have. Maybe we're needing to do a business valuation or
But that's part of a
somebody-
financial team, right? Versus
Right.
two advisors. Because I was sitting there thinking about that too. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Yeah, no.
it hit me really strongly that when you said that, because I thought, well, you're probably working with a Medicare specialist. You're probably working with an elder law or an estate planning attorney, possibly a CPA. I mean, that's still part of that financial team, and that's giving you those extra wisdom viewpoints, if you will.
Right, right. And those are advisors that then, they are financial advisors, some of them,
Sure.
but they complement. They're not duplicating. We're not trying to do the exact same thing
Right.
without talking to each other and, and have the client then figure out, well, how now do I put this all together? I've got, this third, this advisor saying this third, this third, this. Well, how do I now bring this all together and make it a good plan for me?
Mm-hmm.
No, we have an advisor that is working with, I work with my clients as their, CFO of their financial life.
Right.
And then we bring in those other advisors that can shed some light on areas that I don't have the expertise in because it's not my specialty, but we can bring them in to work together for the client to achieve one plan.
Yeah, and that's a whole another, piece that was like, if you have multiple actual, I guess advisors, money managers or brokers or whatever term you want to use, who becomes the quarterback of the team? Well,
Yeah.
you do as the client. And do you really want to be managing that as you're getting into retirement? Or do you want to have a quarterback, so to speak, kind of like you, Liz, right? Who's then quarterbacking these other pieces. Now you're kind of more like the head coach, right? You just kind of get to go and say, hey, what's going on? What are we doing? And to me, that just, I think I would want the simplicity for myself in retirement.
And all of my clients do. I'm sure there are people that want it the other way. That's their choice. But
Sure.
Then they have to be thinking about, how do I make that final decision on what gets done? And how does this impact my spouse when I'm no longer here? And talk to the spouse and have a plan for that. But I really believe if you're a long ways away from retirement, you don't have a lot of planning questions, it's easier to have more than one advisor. But as you approach retirement, it becomes a lot more important to have that cohesive and comprehensive plan. You want it to cover your retirement income, your taxes, your investments, your risk, legacy, and estate planning. And you want somebody that helps you know what action to take, because anytime you take action, it's going to impact the other areas.
Mm-hmm.
So you want somebody that can really help you, where everybody on that team is rowing in the same direction so that you are on your best path.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the right way of looking at it. Are there occasional instances? Sure, maybe some unique situations here and there, but I think for most of us, right, just having that one resource to turn to kind of help us get everything done. And that's why so many advisors do offer those consultations and reviews and things complimentary. That's why everybody has a podcast now or YouTube channels, so that you can learn a little bit about their philosophy and who they are and how they approach things, and you get a feel for their demeanor, right? Then you come in for that consultation and see if that's the right fit for you. And that's kind of helps you kind of vet them out so that you can find that one advisor that's the right fit for you, right? So
find somebody that you can trust, that has the knowledge, works in the area that you're really looking for some help in.
The quote unquote gets you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Two advisors, maybe, but probably more likely twice the confusion, right? So at the end of the day, as Liz said, you want to walk your best path for retirement. So if you need some help, reach out to Liz. Again, that's a resource, right? So check and see if she's the right fit for you by listening to the podcast. Maybe you're taking that step already. If you got questions, you need some help, you want to have a consultation, whatever it looks like, reach out to her at bestpathadvisors.com. That's bestpathadvisors.com, and check out some of her YouTube channels, or YouTube videos, as well. You can find her YouTube channel on her website as well under the good stuff. So again, bestpathadvisors.com, and you can subscribe to this audio podcast on Apple or Spotify or whichever podcasting app you enjoy using. Liz, thanks for hanging out and breaking it down. Always appreciate it.
Always fun. I appreciated it too.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We'll see you next time right here on Retire on Your Best Path with Liz Whittaberry, financial advisor and founder at Best Path Advisors.
The preceding program is sponsored by Best Path Advisors, which is solely responsible for its content. Securities offered through J.W. Cole Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through J.W. Cole Advisors. Best Path Advisors, J.W. Cole Financial, and J.W. Cole Advisors are unaffiliated entities. The opinions expressed by Liz Whittaberry should not be construed as specific tax, legal, or investment advice, nor as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Neither J.W. Cole Financial nor its representatives provide legal, tax, or accounting advice. Persons who provide such advice do so in a capacity other than as a registered representative of J.W. Cole. Investing is subject to risks, including the loss of principal. Due to volatility within the markets mentioned, opinions are subject to change without notice. Information is based on sources believed to be reliable, however, their accuracy or completeness cannot be guaranteed.